I've never talked about crunch periods on this show because in an ideal modern era, in an ideal 2016, it shouldn't be a discussion. It really shouldn't. But then some jumped up old schooler, fueled by insecurity, just has to come out and talk to these so-called coddled entitled youngsters like they're the only realist in the room. Enter Alex St. John, the co-creator of DirectX, and a very large focal point of today's episode. His opinions on crunch and modern game developers is alarming. I will highly recommend that you check out some of his writing, some of his history with his company and his employees. It's incredible. Don't harass him, please. That is something I'd like to make clear. It's one of the reasons I don't do many episodes calling out individuals, because I don't like the idea that they'll get, attacked in a way that crosses a line. But certainly scrutiny and criticism is something that, well, this guy kind of deserves. I mean, just check it out. The idea of the crunch has been a part of games and technology development for decades. Developers working overtime, sleeping at their computers, not seeing their families, all to ensure a video game is delivered on time. Perhaps the most famous discussion involving crunch came about in 2004, when writer Erin Hoffman, publishing under the name EA Spouse, spoke of the miserable working conditions at Electronic Arts. Her writing led to successful class action lawsuits against the publisher, and even industry changes, such as making entry-level programmers eligible for overtime pay in California. In recent years, the practice has been condemned enough to render it fairly unpopular, but still stories of excessive work hours and encroachment on employees' personal lives remain. Chaos Studios, for example, was alleged to have had its employees working 7 days a week for several months to release Homefront. For all the good it did that piece of shit game. For the most part, many devs agree that a reasonable work-life balance is important for the mental health of a creator and will have a positive impact on their creativity. Despite what one may see as fairly obvious and fair criticisms of crunch periods, they have their defenders. Professional snake oil salesman Peter Molyneux has touted the benefits of overworking employees, claiming it brings people together, produces a sense of camaraderie and energy. Most recently, and perhaps most controversially, DirectX co-creator Alex St. John went on a tirade to extol the virtues of crunch, claiming those who complain about it are perpetuators of victimology and wage slave attitudes by demanding reasonable working hours and fair compensation. Making games is not a job, it's art, he claims. With that excuse, St. John argues that only the truly passionate people can make great games, and that passion can only manifest via a willingness to overwork, not expect overtime pay, and be happy that your work life and personal life is skewed excessively towards the former. Basically, work for free or you're not a game developer. Making fun of complaining devs, St. John writes, "They rant about the value of work-life balance, how hit games can be developed on a schedule with proper management, and how they can't produce their best work when their creative energies are tapped after a long 40-hour work week, sitting at a desk. Apparently people can even burn out working too hard to make video games." Wow. What a dim fucking view of video games that guy has. How utterly disrespectful to the hard work and time and energy it takes to make a quality game. How dismissive of games themselves. And what a disgustingly unappreciative attitude toward creative industries. It is worth noting that St. John did himself famously burn out at one point, despite making a mockery of the idea in his recent article. In 1997, he got himself fired from Microsoft and was openly relieved about it, following periods of passing out at his desk and being consumed by his work to the point of losing his personal life entirely. At any rate, Alex St. John, now sitting atop companies as opposed to working under them and giving talks in which he calls engineers with Asperger's syndrome holy grails, has seen fit to pour derision on developers who want stable jobs within the industry, telling them to go find other work in other tech fields if they don't like it. In doing so, he's tapped into an old and rather trite attitude that people in creative fields should never expect compensation, that if you're not working for Walmart or in a grey office cubicle, you don't have a real job, and therefore have no right to complain about your conditions, that art itself has no value, that creativity is financially worthless. It's an attitude I see YouTubers face whenever the topic of their earnings comes up, how they should get real jobs and not expect to earn ad revenue, despite often working tremendous amounts to produce entertainment. Because you're not a real artist, not a real writer, not a real entertainer, not a real game dev if you want your talent and hard work rewarded, because the creativity itself should be reward enough. And And you know what? In a world where artists aren't, say, human beings who need things like food, water, shelter and rest, that's a terrific little dream. A world where you can just create and not have to pay rent or support a family and the frogs talk and the dragons fly you into the sky. But with all due respect to Alex St. John and people who think like him, we don't live in that bullshit rose-tinted infantile fantasy land. St. John's arrogant tract makes him out to be the realist of the situation, the guy talking sense to all these whinging entitled game devs, but he's a fucking fantasist if he believes that passion is all you can live on, that passion will keep you from burning out, that passion stops you wanting a paycheck that reflects the hours you've put in. His view is childishly romantic, and it's not fucking real. Whether you create games, write, make videos, whatever, your time is valuable. You've only got a finite amount of it on Earth, and if you're spending it to create something for the entertainment of others, you deserve to be compensated for it. Now, passion is beautiful. It's a drive that few are lucky to be able to have in their careers. But just because you may have become so fortunate to have found such a livelihood, that doesn't mean you don't get to complain about long work hours, unsatisfactory pay, and grueling schedules that could suck that very passion from your bones. I am self-employed, have been ever since I started in this industry, technically, contracting my services to websites and having a schedule I largely got to dictate. Even so, I am prone to overworking. I do have that passion that makes me work too much. I'll see myself spend an entire day filming, editing, recording, writing, and I can do that for 7 days straight. I don't give myself enough vacations, and yes, I do this because I'm fucking zealous about what I do, but you know what? It's not fucking good for me. And at times I've had to stop working for a bit to recharge that energy Molyneux talks about, to restoke the fires of that passion St. John lauds. I've been learning to take more regular breaks and know when to switch off for the good of myself and the things I create, because we're not perpetual motion machines, and we do our best work when we come at it refreshed and rested. I speak from experience. Alex St. John, I work for a living. I speak from experience. I don't care how passionate you are, or even if you like working 7 days a week. Society romanticizes the idea of burning the candle at both ends, admires the idea of people who put work before everything else, but it's reckless. Stress is a killer. Not just a metaphorical killer, a fucking literal one. And nobody, whether they hate their job or love it, deserves long-term stress. It's not just unfair, it's physically fucking dangerous. There is so much wrong with Alex's argument that this episode could spend an hour tearing it to pieces. He completely ignores the reality of the job market, presenting it as an easy thing to just quit one's job and find another. Don't like your job? Just quit game dev and work at some technology startup or make a Kickstarter. Yeah, try telling that to everybody working dead-end jobs who break their goddamn backs and take shit from customers and fucking have to because there's nothing else for them. It fucking baffles me that this guy actually has veteran career status because he talks like an overprivileged Tory politician who's never had to work a day in his life. It reeks of a fuck you, got mine attitude. He's made it, so everybody can make it. And if you can't, then you're just not trying hard enough. And fuck that. Here's what crunch really fucking is. It's a lot of people hurting themselves, sacrificing themselves for the benefit of a few people on top. And lines about passion and art are bullshit propaganda lines meant to keep the workers marching in lockstep. Working excessive amounts of overtime to meet a deadline isn't passion, it's fear. Fear of angering higher-ups, of losing a job. Working excessive amounts of overtime to meet a deadline isn't creation of art, it's the antithesis of art. It's turning creativity into a rushed, frightening, regulated, soul-sucking labour. And all for the most cynical of reasons, because I guarantee you the CEO of Electronic Arts doesn't give a flying pigeon's fart for art as much as he cares about delivering shareholders the focus-tested, rushed-out moneymaker they've been promised at the date they expect. There's no passion in crunch. There's executives making promises to their paymasters and then overworking the staff to actualise them. The AAA game industry is not about art, it's about product. And crunch periods, the expectation of creativity on a deadline, is utterly fucking reflective of that. What St. John advocates for is not the freedom from his so-called 9-to-5 wage slave attitude, it's the perpetuation of a 24/7 wage slave attitude. That he considers himself some sort of fucking redeemer for encouraging it is basically appalling. You're not breaking the shackles by championing crunch, you're tightening them, keeping workers members from their families, stopping them getting the rest they need as fucking human beings, and then derisively saying, find another job if you don't like it, as if it's that cocking easy. It's very easy for the fucker on top making millions off the labour of others to talk in such idealistic terms, when you're the one miles away from combat, sending soldiers over the trenches into a hail of machine gun fire. You can have such pleasant and simple overviews of the whole bloody mess. You can just pay attention to the poems and people having a game of football in no man's land, because you're not there. And above all, crunch just doesn't shitting work. There are highly researched studies and talks explaining how it doesn't work. There are companies like THQ and Chaos that promoted crunch and ran themselves out of business because that shit don't work. I'm going to go out on a fucking limb here and make this wacky suggestion to end with, okay? Maybe, just maybe, you don't get the best results from a bunch of tired, worn out, stressed out men and women. Maybe just think about that absolutely zany idea for a minute. It's goddamn 2016. Stop having this fucking conversation as if it's relevant, because crunch is not fucking relevant. It should never have been relevant in this industry, and people who still propagate it are goddamn disconnected, alienated, out of touch dinosaurs. Thank God for me. What time is it? Oh, it's time for a little bit of fuck Konami news. All the news that's fit to make you say fuck Konami. Take a look at this. Solid Snake's back and David Hayter's in the driving seat.
What is it, Colonel?
I'll be telling you all about the Ford Focus SE.
A Ford?
Yes, Snake. You should know, the Ford Focus SE comes with a standard rear-view camera. Plus, it has an EPA estimated 36 highway miles per gallon.
EPA estimated 36 highway miles per gallon? That's remarkable.
Yes, Snake. The Focus SE is the perfect vehicle for driving around Shadow Moses Island.
Colonel, let me stop you. I'm gonna Fulton extract myself a Ford Focus SE right now.
This news came out just before the end of last week's Jimquisition, but I only really want to do one bit of fuck Konami news a week, so I saved it for this week. But I just think it's a classic Konami move to, following the still controversial departure of Hideo Kojima, to take his characters and then use them to sell cars in rather cringy commercials that, to be honest, are a little bit funny, but are mostly embarrassing, as Konami continues to refuse to make real games, or at least good games, and instead just exploits the characters in gambling machines and commercials and just other sell-outy ways. Because that's Konami. Because Konami doesn't give a fuck about video games or the characters or, well, anything except for Konami and whatever profit it can slice off of the creativity and hard work of others. You know what? I bet they love crunch periods. I don't know if they do, but after the things we've heard about from the way they treat their employees, I bet they jerk their little winkuses thinking about crunch periods. Fuck Konami!
So you're interested in a Ford Fusion Titanium? You like its 2.0-liter EcoBoost engine, don't you? I can read you like an open book.